Mic problems. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I will start with a sort of personal explanation. Um, my brother, who is a lawyer, but actually a sort of an informal physicist, has been holding a series of physicist podcasts in which he interviews very, very well-known physicists and others from mostly from Canada and the US. So in the course of interviewing all of his male colleagues, his spouse is a psychologist, and she suggested that he might interview a female colleague. And the colleague that he chose to interview was a woman named Rebecca Goldstein, who's a psychologist and a physicist, and has several Zoom talks. Actually, I have to say she's not a great speaker, but the topics that she speaks about are interesting. One of them is mattering, and she has written a whole series of novels. She is a novelist, which are very much worth reading, that raise questions about what matters in a kind of indirect way. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I might think about it. And then I am your incoming president. And so at that point, 2 years ago, I thought maybe I would write something about what matters from my point of view to our association. So that document that you have, which was not published, unfortunately, in American Newsletter because it was conceptualized as being of limited interest in the new style that it has become accustomed to, was not accepted. It has to be reframed for popular consumption. So I haven't had time to do that, but maybe it's something that we can do. So I sent that out to everybody some time ago, thinking that I would try to articulate what I thought ASA meant from talking to many people and board members and so on. So you probably should read it from that perspective, but it also lays out the way that the concept of mattering in relation to the concept of matter is seen in the literature, which is very interdisciplinary. So this is a fascinating journey. Some of you might like to take it. There are some references and so on. And then I thought that this might be a project that I might suggest that we could mount, a project on mattering. And then I put it aside because many other things sort of stepped in the way, and I was functioning as program chair, and Rick joined me, and blah, blah, blah. So this was an opportunity when our speaker was unable to speak to actually offer a presentation. And Tim said, well, really, we should offer the opportunity to discuss the topic because we might want to do something like it. And we might want to use some of the vehicles that we have available on the internet or in visual anthropology to display our views of what matters, whatever that means to us. So basically that's as far as we've gotten. And the presentation that Dennis mentioned is the Prezi presentation. The format is kind of ideal for this kind of work if we want to speak to an audience on the internet or present at a conference or put it on your website or put it on our website. But it does give an idea of the kind of way of structuring a project that would be actually a lot of fun to work on, would fit into ASA's larger agenda of reminiscence, not reminiscence, sorry, memoiring, which is related to reminiscence. And would also fit into Tim and Steve's questions about what people do after they formally retire as they define new roles and lives for themselves, and so on. So, so I am going to show you this presentation. It's pretty short. It's a bit interactive, and I think you'll enjoy meeting the people. The first thing that I will say about it is that it was not an interview project per se. It was a kind of a photo voice project in which a group of 30 people decided that they wanted to join forces with a professional Latino photographer who was also older to take pictures themselves of things that were important to them and to have professional photographs taken of them. So this is really their project, but they also had messages. They had messages for young people. They had messages about their lives. And so we, being several of us, it was a very interdisciplinary project. So, but several of us decided that it would be worthwhile to interview, and they wanted to talk. So that was the nature of the project, and it produced many things. A beautiful photographic exhibit, an opportunity for them to come to their exhibit and speak about their lives. It produced this presentation. It produced an article on well-being, because a lot of the work and their lives, a lot of what they were presenting was on ways of searching for well-being in lives that in many cases were very challenging. So it was a great applied project. I don't know that we'd want to do anything quite like that, but for better or for worse, let me share it with you. And you can see what one kind of thing that that typically we wouldn't consider producing, because we really love our words. But in this case, it offers a different way of sharing our words. So this presentation was actually prepared for the AAGE, help me with this. I was the treasurer for 10 years and I never got the name right. Association for Anthropology, Aging, and the Life Course. And Gerontology, and now the Life Course. So you can see that the authors are myself and my colleague who really did most of the interviews, Kim Rada, a nurse anthropologist. And we did the project without theorizing it, basically because we were doing a mental health study in senior housing at the time. This was limited resource senior housing. And people had asked us to do the study of depression because they were concerned about other residents in the building who were depressed, or they felt were lonely, they were isolated, they weren't coming out. They wanted to understand what was going on and why they weren't getting treatment. So we did that study with them in the building, and we wanted to do something more active than bringing in services, which we also did. So this was a way of addressing the question of isolation and loneliness by inviting people in a community of residents to come together to do this sort of complex, multifaceted, essentially reminiscence project, which they could share with each other, and then take out to the rest of the community, thereby becoming visible, because people who live in buildings like this, anybody who lives in assisted living, also knows that they can be somewhat isolating if you don't have cars and you don't have a social network. So it was a project with multiple agendas, and we theorized that. I'm going to have a little trouble with Prezi because it's a bit tricky, so bear with me. So we put it into the context of addressing loneliness. And I added very recently, like yesterday, what matters. It was not in the original title. And we situated it in the context of, we like to do elicitation as qualitative researchers. And so here we used a form of photographic elicitation, but not by showing people pictures, but by having them take pictures of what was important and sharing that information with each other, which becomes, of course, ethnographic data. We also situated in a very extensive literature on reminiscence. There are many different forms of reminiscence. Memoiring is one form, which generally is not highlighted in the reminiscence literature. But Peggy, I'm sure, and other people who work in gerontology know that reminiscence is a way of resolving unsolved problems in our lives as we age, although we can reminisce at any moment in our lives. And finally, in the area of art, and art as a basis for intervention, art as a basis for reminiscing, and art as a basis for creative representation and solicitation of ethnographic data. Okay, so now So what I think I've already more or less explained what we did, but just to give you a better sense of the context, we sent an invitation out, well, at the end to the broader public for a wider exhibit. And in order to conduct the project, we had many different partners. We had institutional partners, research and housing and aging. We had all of the residents. There were about 75 or 80 residents in this particular senior housing building. Everybody supported it. Not everybody participated in the photographic process. And then a pretty large staff of people who were actually working on another project, but they joined to volunteer their time on this one. Okay, this is where yes. Okay, so we did it. I'll show you the picture of the building. You can see how big it is and how barren the area is around it. And not much to do. If you walk outside, there's not much green space. The problem in senior housing for people with limited incomes. And the people involved in it were people 18 to 88, because there were some younger people there with mostly histories of drug use or gunshot wounds or other kinds of things. Very diverse, primarily English and Spanish speaking, so it was a bilingual effort. 30 people volunteered. It was IRB reviewed, and this was really only a part of what we produced, but I want you to see this because this is what I had in mind as a product that we might be able to consider if we were to embark on, let's say, a mutual interviewing effort within our association with visual or audio or other kinds of supplemental materials that would share what we think is important in our lives. So these are all people who were interviewed and who contributed to things. I'll show you what they contributed. So you can choose one. Which person would you like to learn about? Somebody select one. Can you see it?
Miguel Massanet.
Good.
Ione, somebody from Jamaica.
Okay, one at a time. Okay, so we'll come to her in a moment. So this is Miguel. He presented, I think he didn't have a food recipe. So he presented a photograph of what was really important to him, which was a picture of himself and he played in a band, obviously, and he loved to sing and he entertained people in the building, and he didn't cook. So we asked people for their recipes of food that they cooked for their family and their friends and people important to them. And then we asked them for a message that they wanted to share with other people. So for those of you that can read Spanish, please read it. He says, "This is what is in my blood, the music of the people. I entertain myself with it, with songs I like to sing. All my life I've been an adventurer." So he's talking about himself, but his message is, as you can see, do what you love, entertain others, be an adventurer. So now, I did. I'm sorry, I missed that because Tim's head was in front of it. So his recipe was rice and beans. And he didn't exactly provide a recipe, probably because he didn't cook it. So, but in any case, it's what he loved to eat and what he ate when he was a kid, and it has good memories for him. Okay, who was the next one?
The 96-year-old. Ione McNeil.
Isn't she beautiful? So here is her recipe. She eats fruit and she bakes, cooks, loves the cooking, loves it very much, but no recipe. Here's the recipe. So this is her advice. This is her recipe for life. God really keeps me. I believe in him. I'll live for him until I die. That's my motto. To be happy is that I'm happy helping people and giving them good advice. That makes me happy. This is a theme that, not surprisingly, ran through many, many of the interviews. Making other people happy, relating to other people, spiritual, having a connection to spirituality. Anybody else?
Francis Huckabee.
Francis. Again, I like to help other people, and sometimes I help myself. So these are all professional photographs, and each person received a copy of a photograph of themselves to take home framed. And Francis's recipe, here it is. Shall I read it? Sweet potatoes and collard greens and baked macaroni and potato salad and cornbread and some ribs. I don't think I have to tell anybody how to cook it because everybody cooks it different, but that's my favorite recipe because it's soul food. So that is Francis. Francis was a younger resident. And one more.
Let's do this other 90-year-old. Hayfield, Elston.
Just a sec, I'm having trouble with Cheryl's head, not Edna. What is the name again?
Hayfield,
On the far left-hand
Alston.
corner, Hayfield, Alston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There he is. So some of them actually gave us their photos. So this was a photo that was important to him, his church. And here is his recipe. He's a vegetarian, sort of. I eat beef, I eat chicken, I eat turkey, I eat fish. I eat scaly fish. If you're going to eat fish, eat a fish that has scales. Does anybody else eat fish with scales or without scales?
I think it's a
Without,
Jewish rule.
have scales. You have to have scales.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know what his religion is, but that's kind of unusual. Okay, so
What fish don't have scales?
catfish,
Catfish, sharks, eel,
Sword.
And
sharks,
all seafood, like
yeah,
crawfish.
all seafood.
It's
So
also-
here is,
It's in the Bible. There's some section of the Bible that warns you against the things that crawl on the bottom and so on.
yes. It's that section when God tells,
yeah, Leviticus. Mary Douglas wrote a famous chapter of her book, Purity and Danger, on that.
so I guess we should all turn to our Bibles and see what our Bibles tell us about scaly fish. Anyway, he reads his Bible and he gets a lot of his inspiration for life from the Bible. So these are among the people that participated. There were some results, of course, and outcomes from this project. If we were to do anything like this, we would have our own. And of course, in this kind of project, there are also challenges, which would be very different from anything that we might do, and then some references. So I will send you the link if you want to look at some of the references. And I can also send you some references about this project and about the material on relational well-being, which is in a book published by an anthropologist on well-being and culture, well-being, and public health. So I'm going to stop sharing now. As I said, it's not a very complex presentation, but at least it gives you a sense of what can be done with limited resources This can be, sound can be added to Prezi if, you know, if you wanted to put music behind it or do anything like that. And, but the most important thing is the reflections that give rise to the material, the brief extracted materials that are in the
Hello?
descriptions of the individuals.
Hello?
Hello?
Please mute Alice.
What are you calling about?
Alice, come mute
Alice, please
yourself.
mute.
Is someone trying to speak that would like to?
No, it's Alice on the phone.
Okay,
I've,
so,
I've muted her.
okay. Thank you.
It's-
So we wanted to open this up to the possibility of discussion to see whether the concept was of interest, whether any of us might like to reflect further on it, and if we might want to consider producing something that would display, perhaps in words, perhaps in writing, perhaps audiovisually, representations of what the ASA membership, not collective, but individual as a collection, thinks about what matters in this world today, what matters in our lives, what matters at critical junctions as we make decisions about whether to move one way or another, or life forces us into that position. It's really an open slate, so we're open to any ideas or not doing anything at all.
Yeah, I would like Margot, if you're still around. You're
Yes.
still, if you could talk a little bit about the Phil Singer project.
Phil Singer was one of our ASA colleagues who was retired, and he approached the AAA with an idea that he would make a $10,000 contribution to ASA, and that money would be used to reimburse him for travel expenses related to his research project called The Last Participant Observation. And what he wanted to do in this project was to interview cultural anthropologists with their PhD who were at least 80 years old, and to interview them for their anthropological reactions to being old. And I think he interviewed 13 people. He had a filmmaker who accompanied him. And he did have releases for all but one of the anthropologists. I think only one person declined to be interviewed after being invited. But he interviewed a variety of male and female anthropologists. Most of them were on the East Coast. I was trying to, he first came to me saying that he only wanted ASA to handle the paperwork. You know, he'd send me the receipts and I'd authorize the AAA to reimburse him. But he really wanted more of a dialogue with us, and he wanted ASA to help suggest people who would be interviewed. And we did that where we could. And I tried to get him to think geographically broader, because he was focusing mostly on people on the East Coast. And I hate to say that maybe I'm biased because I live in the Midwest, but I thought it would be useful to his project if he had people from across the country more. And I do realize that if he interviews people on the East Coast, in person. I mean, he was taking a plane with his cameraman, and they were going to wherever the person was and interviewing them there, staying in a hotel, and or driving for those that were closer. So I do realize that you can interview more people if you can drive and take short plane rides rather than cross-country plane rides. But in any event, he ended up interviewing, I think, 13 people. And he had several hours of film of these interviews, plus transcripts of their conversations before and after the filming. So we ended up amending, at Philip's request, we amended the written contract he had with the AAA to include the transcription of some of these portions that were not filmed. And they were all different. He started out with a series of questions, some of which I thought were creepy, but I never told him that. But it turns out that he didn't even necessarily use those questions. They were very free-flowing, unstructured interviews. They're very interesting. The agreement with the AAA was that the final film, the data and an edited version would belong to the AAA. So I think there are really only very few people who have seen them. I made a point of watching them because I'm the treasurer. I had to make sure this was a real thing, you know. And of course, Philip saw them. Sid also saw them, and Jay Sokolewski that I know of. And then these interviews were used as the focus for several sessions of papers at AAA meetings for several years, probably at least 3 years. And some were ASA sponsored sessions. One was sponsored by AAGE. So that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Is there anything particular that you wanted? Alice?
Yes, there's something very particular, and that is what Nancy Lurie told me. Okay, so Nancy is Midwest in flyover country, but I think she was right on the original list as a former AAA president. So that kind of put her into the notice of the New York crowd. Excuse me about that. So the thing that Nancy Lurie told me was that initially Phil told the subjects that he had on his first list that he wanted them to talk for about an hour on film about the wisdom they had gained through all those years now that they were elderly. And Nancy Lurie said, Phil, I have not gained any wisdom. I don't have any special wisdom. I'm still alive and I'm still doing things, Phil. And I suspect he got that reaction from other people because it wasn't long before he reframed his central idea, which was he dropped the word wisdom and that whole idea. He asked people to tell about their experiences as anthropologists through the many years. And he chose people whose experiences were very relevant to the development of anthropology. And Maria Cattell will certainly remember Marjorie Schweitzer as one of the people that Paul Doty and I chose for the Expanding Anthropology in the Post-War Period book. So there was some overlap there. But I think it is very significant that Phil initially talked about wisdom, like, what is that? You know, you go up on the hill to the hermit sort of thing. And I'm sure several of the people who responded as Nancy did, like, hey, I'm alive and I'm still an active anthropologist. Let's talk about what I know from my professional experience. Thanks.
Yeah, that's
Well-
great. That's great. Good. And I think that all of the videos are on YouTube, so they're accessible to anyone.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've seen them on YouTube. So I've seen about 3 or 4 of them. So they're on YouTube. I don't remember how to get there, but I can find out and pass it along to everybody if you're interested.
Margot,
They,
I may have missed something, but I didn't hear what time period this all happened. When did he do these projects?
this started about 2010,
Uh-huh.
and it probably lasted until 2013 or 14.
Yeah, so that's something that, before internet and or electronic communication age.
Right.
So,
What was done with the material?
if I might say something, on the webpage, the Senior Association of Senior Anthropologists webpage or information, if those are already posted on Facebook or somewhere, YouTube, why not just link them to the page?
They should be. They should be. We can do that.
To address Claire's question about what actually happened to them. Philip conveyed them physically to me, and I physically conveyed them to Elaine Lynch and at a AAA meeting in Chicago, and they're very heavy. They're on these huge discs. And it's all commercial production and so on. And she said, oh, she wasn't going to carry those. And so I ended up sending them to her registered certified mail. So they were conveyed to the AAA office, which was the terms of our original contract. And so where they physically are right now, I don't know, but they were in the hands of the AAA. But I'm delighted to hear that they've been posted on YouTube.
And it's called the last, what was it? The last?
The last participant observation.
Okay. I think you can find it using that as a keyword. So, but I'll look. Okay. So I think that what we were trying to do with today's chat, this was an example of one thing that had been done by a member of the ASA, although it wasn't necessarily a group ASA activity, but rather I think that what Jay is talking about and what I'm talking about, we're thinking about something that what would be a focus of something that would take advantage of our knowledge of the field and our still involved and our the maintenance of our involvement in ASA that would be worthwhile sharing as a set of compiled something or other. And maybe Jay, you have some ideas.
I want to take us back to some members of this group are part of the ASA board. And when this idea came up, actually, we were thinking of putting it into the budget to do a project that I think was of interest to some board members because it offered the opportunity, we're all interviewers, You know, we don't need, I mean, it's nice to have some, it's a luxury, I suppose, to have somebody interview us. It doesn't, but in any case, it's also enjoyable for us to interview each other, especially since not all of us know each other. And I mean, my own thought was that I really didn't know very many people who were ASA members when I joined and became president-elect. So it is a way of both reflecting on the question of what matters at whatever level, whether it's the environment, our political setting, the work that we've done, critical junctures in our lives, what this a multifaceted notion of mattering and well-being. I mean, it's an open question. I just think I guess my thought was that we might consider thinking about it now, reflecting on it as the possibility of the basis for a project, and thinking about how we could do it together rather than having one of us take on the role of producing a project about us. Because I don't think we're at that point in our, unless we all want to produce a project about us. I think something more substantive might be good. Anyway, those are my thoughts for now. Does that appeal to anybody?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, wait, I'm seeing hands.
Oh,
Three
sorry.
hands. If you don't mind, I'm going to start at the upper left-hand corner with Claire, come down to Deva, then Suzanne, then Priscilla.
Oh, what am I doing wrong? Oh, well.
Oh, did I miss you? Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
No, you didn't do anything wrong. I just maybe looked at the wrong box. Okay,
I'm
so
pushing it.
Claire,
Wrong
Deva,
buttons.
Penny. Is that right? And Priscilla, did you have your hand up?
Alice
I'm-
had her hand up.
I'm
Alice.
happy to help out with any museum aspects, any presentation, any writing, any, mounting of photographs, whatever. That's
Oh,
kind of
great.
what I've done for 40 years. So
Oh,
happy to
that's
help
perfect.
out.
Perfect. Since we look so splendid on Zoom, I'm sure you can make us look even better. Claire.
I'm just not quite sure what you're after. If you're after our sort of autobiographical insights, that's one thing. And how we could pull that together into some sort of a discussion of what matters, which is, I think, what you're after. I don't know right now. In my experience, you have to do all that gathering first, and then then you look for the themes. So if you ask me right now how I've used anthropology in my life, I'd have to say I've used it since I was a small child because I had immigrant parents and we
Yeah.
lived in different places. But as I also said, I had to drop out for a while because a lot of what was going on in anthropology was incredibly irrelevant to me. And I'm focused on healthcare, or the general term in medicine, which is all medicines, not just biomedicine. And since I was a medical practitioner myself, I have a focus on, I don't quite know how to explain it. I mean, I'm about to give a talk on Neanderthals. So if you go with a strict reductionistic science, understanding Neanderthals, you understand nothing. So basically, you have to expand out into comparative studies and into something we might call philosophy to make any sense of Neanderthals. They aren't just bones and chunks of stone. So I could go on like that. I don't know if that's what you're after.
That's the beginnings. Let's just work this for a moment. You said a number of things that I would, if I were having a conversation with you and you with me, I would be asking you questions about why this topic is of importance to you, why you feel the need, what is the essence of why you situate Neanderthal life, let's say, in an interdisciplinary effort. I would probe what what underlies it? If you say, I've used anthropology all my life, well, that's great, but what is it that is the essence of the anthropology that you believe in that has been important to you through your life? So that's sort of an example of the kind of interviewing that we could engage in mutually to explore what it is that really matters.
You might
when
have to
you-
do something on the order of co-interviewing, because I might feel
That's a
as
good
if
idea.
you were asking me very important questions, but that weren't important to me. Whereas I would want to ask you why you were asking me those questions. Okay?
I hope, well, this is being recorded, so that's a really good idea, because of course it would need to be I mean, it could be a one way, both ways, or an interaction in terms of why something is important that I hear that you might not have meant, and so on. So that's one way to tackle it. There are many ways to tackle it, but there are some other hands. So let's see, Penny.
Oh, thank you. I guess I'm going back a couple of steps.
Yes.
What I've been working on and what I think feels more important to me is to say why anthropology matters, and be
Okay.
able to do that in such a broad way that we make that argument to the public. But, you know, I'm 80 and I think back sometimes that why the hell did I become an anthropologist, you know? So that's what motivated some of my work. And I think that it's individual experiences would feed into that model of why anthropology matters to us, but also, you know, in terms of addressing global issues. But a little bit, what I need to know first is I'd love to know more about the relationship between mattering and matter, because when I remember the comment about museum studies, and also the objects that matter to us. Can you tell us a little more about the relationship between mattering and matter?
Okay, that's a big one. I'm not sure I can do it well, because matter, if we take a sort of a stricter definition of matter, matter is something that's substantive, that you can hold in your hand, that you can manipulate. It's most of the way that scientists work in the world of matter.
Yeah.
Once you get to mattering, you're into the world of, you know, this is the mind-body distinction. You're into a shift from what is concrete and measurable and seeable and feelable into the world of emotions and culture and psychology and things that actually are being discussed at the anthropology meetings in Portland under the umbrella of culture, let's see, it's culture, matter, and something else. So, I mean, these are questions out there right now. The physicists are very involved in this question because we can't figure out how to get from the matter of the brain to the creation of emotions and thoughts and ideas and culture. So, so I guess that's how I see it. Mattering is about doing something that matters in this world, and matter and mattering are separate domains that would be good to try to connect.
Yeah. Thanks.
I don't know if that helps.
Alice, Alice,
Yeah.
Alice, go ahead.
And don't forget Deva.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah,
I'm going to be very, very frank. This disturbs me very much. As an anthropologist, ethnographer, I make a very careful approach of not asking leading questions. I was taught not to ask leading questions, not to pursue leading questions as a dialogue, but to be there humbly, kind of like Soltax's action anthropology, which did not involve any action when you're in the community, but what you might do outside. So my entire personal, professional life has been sitting with community people and often saying almost nothing, but simply quietly and without intrusion observing, and maybe following up with what starts as a somewhat casual type of conversation, but letting the person whose knowledge and experience I'm interested in knowing more about, just letting them talk. And the whole idea of in advance, you formulate questions, you go out, you are ready to record the answers to the questions you formulated. I do see the difference between the way you constructed your study, Jay, where you chose food as something innocuous to start a conversation going. But nevertheless, it appears to me that the process was more like, psychology, social science sort of thing, and not anthropology, where epistemic humility is a technical word, where you listen. And of course, this was the impetus for the book that I co-edited with Peter Schmidt, an archaeologist, Archaeologies of Listening. We really, really emphasize you just listen and let the people talk to you about things. And that also includes something that I explored in depth recently in writing, I'm sorry I have to say it, my new book, Truth and Power in American Archaeology, which is a catchy title, but what it's about is why is archaeology different from STEM science, National Science Foundation archaeology, which a number of us archaeologists have been very disturbed all these years by the pseudoscience that passes. And so I spent the last couple of years trying to figure out and put into words what is the essence of the historical sciences. And history of anthropology is really a historical science. And the basic thing is that your data are there, out there, and you have to excavate, as it were. In this case, by listening what these data are, and then try to fit them into a larger picture of how we understand human beings. So it's a matter fundamentally of seeing the data are out there, and you are open to seeing them first of all, and then trying to fit them into a frame of reference. But you don't start with an agenda. So thank you.
Thanks, Diva. Diva? Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I've been taking away in the chat. I'm working on a national virtual museum, and these kinds of interview experiments are a perfect clue. So as I get closer, I can put something together. But some
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
I'm with you,
about the co-creation of that.
Um, I would like to respond to something that Deva put in the chat, which is that, quote, we need to think about a non-material museum. So that has many levels of meaning. And that's the subject of another conversation that I would love to hear more about. So hopefully our time is getting close. So hopefully we can reserve that to think about what would that actually be, a non-material, a think tank? What would it be? That's very innovative. So in terms of if we wanted to proceed, I mean, it sounds to me, we're a community. We're kind of a network. We're not situated in any geographic space. We don't spend a lot of time on a daily basis talking to each other. So we have to work with the conditions that we have. But a conversation, a co-conversation about what's important that allows for ideas to emerge and be explored is a very rich way of collecting data about us, if we are the community, and perhaps even about others on some general topic, maybe, and we could experiment with it and see what happened. It certainly is an excuse to have more conversations.
Yes, Dennis, go ahead. Saber, put your.
All of this is fine, and it's a good, healthy discussion for us as a, even building our own community. But as the applied anthropology in me would say that we need to, how does anthropology matter is really an important issue. Here in Florida, anthropology is in a battle right now.
Yeah.
And the state is now almost censoring courses and books at the course level, and the instructor looking over the syllabus and everything like that. And they've even removed many of the anthropology courses out of the core curriculum that students would have a choice to take as an undergraduate. So in that sense, all of what you're proposing in the open-ended questions and building the community is fine, but I might suggest somewhere down the line that sections of the whatever you record are curated in a way that can be put out there for the public to understand why anthropology matters. We need more voice about how anthropology is important.
So there's a note from Claire about treating this as emergence in a complex environment. So these ideas about co-conversations and emergence, allowing the topic to emerge and engaging in a more natural interaction, builds communities, it builds ideas, but we are all anthropologists, and in that context, there will be ideas about why anthropology matters to us as individuals, to our communities, to the way that human beings relate to each other. So maybe Claire.
Yeah, let me, I had a question, a comment before Claire, okay? And I think that one thing that we're losing sight of is that we are simultaneously the researchers and the subjects.
Yeah.
So one of the things that is, been fascinating to me as when I first came into the ASA, is to find this tremendously great community of scholars and friends, and I want to emphasize the friends part of it. And there are things about, when I first started hearing about, just as we did for some of you at the beginning of this session, hear a little bit about your past, and Claire or Jan, your comments come to my mind immediately about the varied backgrounds that you've had and how you've come and interacted with anthropology and where you are just as Alice is, where she is today. I mean, Alice is just, a really great example of someone who is, you know, is a force in many ways, but she and her own life is of great interest. So what I'm hoping that we'll be thinking about is like not somewhat like Phil Singer was getting some of the ideas from those individuals about their perspectives on things. That's what I think is important is to talk about we as individuals. What was it that was really important to you? So, and where are you now in terms of those important things that matter to you? So the things that you are saying now might be different than what you would have said when you were 30 years earlier in your careers. Or has it not? Maybe it hasn't changed. Maybe you've been steady. But what is it that has kept you involved in anthropology? What has kept you sane as a human being in this very, very complex world? And so I think that, that's one of the things that I'm really concerned about as we talk about this conversation is hearing from people who are in the ASA about what's kept them in the field, what's mattered to them. And so, yeah, we can research that, we can come with conclusions, but I want to hear what you have to say. And I don't want us to get in the way of hearing you say what you say.
Okay.
Sabra, I saw you had your hand up, and we
Yeah.
only have a few more minutes left, so.
Tim, I was,
I just,
Yeah, go ahead, Sabra. Sabra. You're muted. You're muted.
I know. I read Jay's paper that she posted, and I thought it was really attractive. And one of the reasons that I got attracted to it is she started out talking about Black Lives Matter. So I'm just in a week or so, I'm giving a paper, a lecture on the Kaepernick kneel. So, and I have an article coming out about it. And I found this great old, speaking about using our ancestors, and not forgetting things that we not reinventing the wheel, is I found this article by Irving Goffman, 1978. It's called Response Cries. Has anybody heard of it? I don't know. It's really, I think Jay would really like to have it for to take a look at it in terms of her ideas of studying who matters, because the response crisis, he has a great section in there about how people address people who don't matter.
Called othering.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can send you the reference, or anybody that wants the reference, I'd be happy to send it. But you really caught my interest just with the way you
Good.
started out that essay.
Can you put the reference in the chat, Sabra?
No, oh, you want me to put it in the chat?
Then everyone will have it in case they want it.
Okay. I get distracted because I can't listen to what people are saying and write in the chat at the same time. I don't have.
Okay, well, at your convenience, the chat is open.
Okay, all right, I'll do
All
it.
right,
Thank you.
Cheryl.
Or
Cheryl?
email, please. Email.
Cheryl?
Yeah.
Oh, email.
Email? Okay, I'll email it.
Whoops.
Yeah, okay, I'll email it. That's better. That's
You can
better.
post it on the ASA listserv.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Are
Then
you
we'll,
ready?
we'll all get it. Then we'll all get it.
I'll make sure to get it before the end of the day. I'll put it somewhere that you could get it. And thank you for your interest then. Yeah.
Great.
Cheryl, go ahead.
So yeah, what I wanted to say was that as a K-14 administrator and also a member of the League of Women Voters, I can tell you that the general public does not have a clue what anthropology does or
Yeah,
how we address
yeah.
all of these important global issues. And I think this project would be a great project. I think that, but the more we can do that would get our information out to the general public, the better off we're all going to be.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's what I was going to say in response to you, Jay. You were talking about all the good things we're getting from anthropology and how it has guided our lives. What has struck me again and again and again, as Cheryl is implying here, is that nobody knows about it, and our big message about culture has not spread.
Yes, or it's spread negatively.
Yeah, negative.
And so the ineffective aspect of anthropology is something that does interest me. I am actually very curious about it because at the end of my book, I have to see if I can somehow cause the readers of the book to say, we need to change a couple things. There's a whole literature out there about encouraging change, but people are really resistant. And this message, since the early 20th century, has not spread.
Part of that is
Not in the hand of the sociologists to some extent, but they are really not doing what we're doing.
part of that comes from the fact that anthropologists are really good
Suzanne.
at shooting themselves in the foot. So there's a very I don't understand the degree to which anthropologists have undermined our concept of culture. I don't fully understand why we make ourselves unique by telling the world that we need to be decolonialized any more than any other field in the past. And I think we have to react against those issues that diminish us and that we seem to accept so easily.
Suzanne, go ahead.
Years in the field of public health. And one thing I've found is that qualitative research doesn't matter to them, that a lot of people dismiss it as anecdotal, unimportant, easy to do, etc. And to me, one of the goals of staying with anthropology is that's a place where that fundamental approach is not, it's validated, let's say. And you ask why you stay with the field of anthropology. I find a lot of the things that happen at the anthro meetings annoying, but I always go to them to find out what's going on. And one day a couple of years ago, I was talking to a guy from London who also did international development. And he said, and somebody just given a really poor talk about local NGOs or something, very badly designed study. And he said, why do you stay with this? I said, because this is my family. This is sort of where I started. So there's an identity issue here, isn't there? That's all I have to say.
Jay, I'm going to give you the last comments before we sign off for the day.
Okay, well, I think that however we do it, whether it's in co-constructed conversations or some team decides that people who would like to be helped to think through what matters in anthropology for them or for the field or for the public, I think we're onto a general topic that we can treat in an open-ended way. And I think it's hard to, it's going to be hard to separate out what we think it's important for the public to know about anthropology from the way that it has enriched our lives, even when we're angry with it. So I'd like to suggest that if you think that you would like to pursue these conversations, we can host conversations online. We can develop a strategy for moving forward. We don't have to make any kind of decision now. We don't have any money. except possibly for transcription. So we don't have to worry about money. So
Mhm.
just think about it, maybe jot some ideas down, send them to Tim, send them to me, and we'll see what we can put together as a group.
Mhm.
I think it would be beneficial for sure, and it will offer some of us who have been frustrated for a long time the opportunity to put their thoughts into words about anthropology and why we should be doing better with it. Let's put it that way.
This time I can contribute with something from the publisher's point of view, which of course.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
Mark.
could you say that a bit louder?
And maybe next time I can then also talk about this from the publisher's perspective, because that's very relevant here, of course. So
Okay,
That would be helpful to
Mm.
have your perspective, Marion, on the way to shape it, so
Yeah.
that we might have a better idea of how to hold conversations if we choose to do that. That'd be great.
maybe we could chat in Tampa a little bit about it.
oh yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
This would be a
Fine.
good topic for your breakfast coffee with
Sure.
Tim.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I hope to see many of you there.
I'm sure we will.
So could you let us know, let me, Margot, and Rick know who is coming to Tampa? And then that might lead to the possibility of a kind of informal group meeting as well as any conversations with Tim,
That would be nice. Yeah.
preferably on Wednesday morning.
Oh,
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for being here and engaging in conversation. I think it was very, very interesting. And Jay, thanks so much for leading us in this conversation.
Well, I think it's, I am very excited about the possibility that we might have a team of people to move forward with this idea, and even at the end, a publishing thought. So that's very exciting.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you in Tampa, and then we'll see Harriet, you here, is going to be talking in December, right? Okay, we'll see you in Tampa or in December. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thanks.